Also on the agenda today, the new document has dropped, Dignitas Infinita. In fact, right now, as we speak, there is a press conference live in Rome where they are revealing this document, and you and I are going to go through it just a little bit. We're going to just glance through it a bit together. I've not read it. You've not read it. We'll check it out a little bit together. I'm told they are not calling out homosexuality as a sin.
By the way, my name is Joe McLean. I host a radio program called A Catholic Take, where we look at the world through a Catholic lens. I'd love for you to hang out with us. If you like it, give it a thumbs up and let us know what you think in the comments below.
As we speak, there is a conference going on at the Vatican because a brand new document has just dropped. The Declaration Dignitatis Infinita is out, and they are going through this document right now in the press conference as we speak. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, His Eminence Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez is there. The Reverend Monsignor Armando Mateo is there. He's the secretary for the doctrinal section of the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith. And then there's a Professor Paolo Scarcelia. I have no idea how to say that correctly, mea culpa, but nonetheless, that's who's at the press conference going through this document. And I thought, it's brand new, hot off the press. Very few people have probably read it by this point. So I thought, let's just poke through it a little bit. Let's just poke through it and see what we find. I've not read it. You've not read it. Let's just see what we see here. How about that, huh? So I'm going to be linking to the document itself in the show notes over at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. But the Declaration Dignitas Infinita on human dignity is the document. Now, I'm only going to briefly touch on this document. You should look at it yourself, but I guarantee we're going to get some greater, more in-depth coverage of this document in the days to come. But paragraph 1 of the introduction. Every human person possesses an infinite dignity. Okay. Every human person possesses an infinite dignity, inalienably grounded in his or her very own being, which prevails in and beyond every circumstance, state, or situation the person may ever encounter. The principle, which is fully recognizable even by reason alone, underlies the primacy of the human person and the protection of human rights. In the light of revelation, the Church resolutely reiterates and confirms the ontological dignity of the human person created in the image and likeness of God and redeemed in Jesus Christ. From this truth, the Church draws the reasons for her commitment to the weak and those less endowed with power, always insisting on the primacy of the human person and the defense of his or her dignity beyond every circumstance. Does that last sentence give you any red flags? I mean, it shouldn't, I guess. It shouldn't. I mean, we would agree, right? It's agreeable. And yet I know what you're doing, because I'm doing it too. I'm sitting here going, oh man, is that a setup? Are we being set up? Is there something coming? Is there a shoe to be dropped here? Are they paving the way for something else? That's what you're thinking, but maybe we should give them the benefit of the doubt there. I don't know. Let's keep reading. This ontological dignity and the unique and eminent value of every human, of every man and woman in the world was reaffirmed authoritatively in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights issued by the United Nations General Assembly on 10 December 1948. I don't love it when you quote the United Nations. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm being honest. I don't want you to refer to the United Nations as an authoritative, great source of information for mankind. I would rather, just stick to the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, right? The divine revelation given to us by God. That would be a much better source, in my opinion. So to me, that's just another one of those. I don't love that. I don't like the feeling I get when that. As we commemorate the 75th anniversary of that document, the Church sees an opportunity to proclaim anew its conviction that all human beings created by God and redeemed by Christ must be recognized and treated with respect and love due to their inalienable dignity. True. However, what does that mean in practice? Therein lies the trick. What do you mean by that? If you mean we recognize that human beings are created with this dignity that God gives them, praise be to God. If you mean, therefore, that we have to give them a pass for all of their choices in life, well, then no, sorry, that's not how that works. So what the question is, what do you mean by that? It goes on. And again, I don't intend to read this entire document to you. It would be way too much. But point 7, paragraph 7 says there is widespread agreement today on the importance and normative scope of human dignity and on the unique and transcendent value of every human being. However, the phrase, the dignity of the human person risks lending itself to a variety of interpretations that can yield potential ambiguities. Now, all right, okay, now you're talking. Now you're talking. I think you and I may agree about that. We got to be careful. Definitions have meanings, and meanings, really have consequences. So let's be clear about what we mean here. It goes on. It could yield potential ambiguities and contradictions that lead us to wonder whether the equal dignity of all human beings is truly recognized, respected, protected, and promoted in every situation. Now, all of a sudden, I'm starting to feel a little red flag there. This brings us to recognize the possibility of a fourfold distinction of the concept of dignity: ontological dignity, moral dignity, social dignity, and existential dignity. The most important among these is the ontological dignity that belongs to the person as such simply because he or she exists and is willed, created, and loved by God. Ontological dignity is indelible and remains valid beyond any circumstances in which the person may find themselves. When we speak of moral dignity, we refer to how people exercise their freedom. While people are endowed with conscience, they can always act against it. All right, I like that. That's a good sentence. I'm on board with that. It's true. You have dignity. You're made in God's image and likeness. That's clear from Genesis chapter 1. But you can also choose to tarnish your own dignity, your own God-given dignity, by making horrible choices. Transgender ideology being an example of that. There are others. That's not the only one. There are others. But that certainly is the one that keeps coming up in the headlines quite often, don't you think? And I think this statement seems to talk about that. While people are endowed with conscience, they can always act against it. However, it goes on, were they to do so, they would behave in a way that is not dignified with respect to their nature as creatures who are loved by God and called to love others. Yet, this possibility always exists for human freedom, and history illustrates how individuals, when exercising their freedom against the law of love revealed by the gospel, can commit inestimably profound acts of evil against others. Those who act this way seem to have lost any trace of humanity and dignity. This is where the present distinction can help us discern between the moral dignity that de facto can be lost and the ontological dignity that can never be annulled. And it's precisely because of this latter point that we must work with all our might so that all those who have done evil may repent and convert. Okay, well, it still seems a little bit vague and ambiguous. Like you could probably interpret that same thing to go kind of one way or the other, right? A little bit of everybody can go, yeah, I kind of agree with this, and I also kind of see problems with it. So that ambiguity that Trajac Burton was prophesying last week about this document may in fact be true, which, by the way, he's off today and cannot defend his prophecies. But nonetheless, we must go on. So it is worth mentioning that the classical definition of a person as an individual substance or a rational nature clarifies the foundation of human dignity. As an individual substance, the person possesses ontological dignity, that is, at the metaphysical level of being itself. Having received existence from God, humans are subjects who subsist, that is, they exercise their existence autonomously. The term rational encompasses all the capacities of the human person, including the capacities of knowing and understanding, as well as those of wanting, loving, choosing, and desiring. It also includes all corporeal functions closely related to these abilities. Nature refers to the conditions particular to us as human beings, which enable our various operations, and the experiences that characterize them. In this sense, nature is the principle of action. We do not create our nature. We hold it as a gift, and we can nurture, develop, and enhance our abilities. By exercising the freedom to cultivate the riches of our nature, we grow over time. Okay, you know what I'm getting out of that? Again, this is my first reaction. I'm reading it for the first time. You're experiencing it for the first time. We're doing this together just to get a taste of this thing before we get more expertise, advice, or insight into the whole document. But it's one of my ongoing complaints. Even since JP2, the gobbledygook that gets thrown into some of these documents that only talking heads at best read is just mind-numbing to me. Like, clarity is charity. I love that about Benedict XVI. You got simple, straightforward language. You didn't have to read it 10 or 20 times just to kind of wrap your head around exactly what did they say there. I mean, come on. It goes on and on and on. It doesn't need to. It really, really doesn't need to. All right. So point number one, a growing awareness of the centrality of the human dignity. I'm not going to, again, read everything to you here. Point number two, the church proclaims, promotes, and guarantees human dignity. Point number three, dignity, the foundation of human rights and duties. Point number four, an objective basis for human freedom. Point number five, the relational structure of the human person. Point number six, freeing the human person from negative influences in the moral and social spheres. And then it goes on, some grave violations of the human dignity. Anyway, we're going to link to it in the show notes for you over at thestationofthecross.com/ACT. But here is what Michael Haynes from LifeSite News is saying. Out of this entire massive document with lots of words and who knows what, apparently homosexuality is not being condemned. Isn't that an attack, as the introduction seems to indicate, against the moral dignity of the human person? Transgender ideology, isn't that an attack against the moral dignity of the human person? That was our taste test. We're going to have to get somebody who has obviously going to have read through this document with some expertise, and we'll have that on the show for you this week. So stick around. More is coming up next. We'll be right back.